so we've got this dynamic where we are all home more, and throughout the news we see one big issue across the North has always been domestic abuse, and I think that's personally I think that's tied to isolation in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
and substance abuse has a piece of that. But any recommendation on people doing ministry with couples? I mean, that are struggling with domestic abuse, or any thoughts in that area? It's just a common occurrence way too much.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, and I'd like to speak specifically to the pandemic situation. So this is a unique kind of isolation where we're carrying stress that some of us aren't acknowledging. I mean, I think we're all aware of the seriousness of the situation, and we're all loaded up with certain amounts of information, but people are not processing that information necessarily the same. Spouses don't process that information necessarily the same. So one thing that we want to help couples do is to, for instance, not judge how they're processing that information, how they're dealing with that anxiety. And by the way, I just want to say everyone is anxious about this thing. Even people that say, I'm not anxious about this, I'm trusting the Lord. Well, of course, I trust the Lord too. But this is still triggering us in ways that is unprecedented in our life experience. There's just so many potential ramifications. I'm not being a doomsayer, because we know that our hope is in Christ, and that we ultimately win with Jesus. But back to how couples deal with anxiety, some people deal with anxiety logically. They just use the logic part of their brain. Others deal with it emotionally, and neither way is wrong. Different people are wired different ways, and so for couples to not judge how they're processing, I think, is very important in keeping them connected. Everything we do in our ministry is helping couples connect better, because the research shows that is the key to successful marriages. I mean, as believers, we know that that marriage is a covenant relationship where Christ is the center and the strength of that relationship. But even secular research talks over and over about how important it is for couples to connect. So we want them to do that successfully. I would say in the coronavirus era, again, back to that information that's coming in, we recommend that you only get information twice a day, max, just so that you can put your mind in other places and connect emotionally, with one another. We also think it's very important to download stress, to be honest about that anxiety. It's important for you, if you're married, to be a safe person for your spouse. It's also important to be vulnerable. In fact, we say that's the key to intimacy, is those two components. You've got to be willing to be vulnerable and be willing to be a safe person. Can't just do one, you have to do both for there to be real intimacy that's achieved between one another. So, just acknowledging how that anxiety shows up in each person, helping couples learn how to name and identify what those feelings are. Are they feelings of grief? Are they disappointment? Are they fear? Is it uncertainty? Because when you name those things, it takes the power out of them. It's kind of put it out into the ether, and now it's a little less potent than it was before.
Right.
Yes, my wife and I, we've been married a long time. If we were not in this current situation, we know when we're needing extra attention in our marriage when we get short with each other, just in a typical situation.
Right.
We're finding that we're uncharacteristically getting short with one another far more than we ever did. So now we've got some terminology for that. We'll say, okay, we're having a COVID moment,
Right.
And then we just quickly reset and just give grace that is far beyond. We don't even have to get into a whole explanation or evaluation or analysis of what we've done. We're just having that moment because we're in this season. Let's call it what it is. It's collective grief. I think we can all at least admit that we're all grieving the loss of something,
Right.
you know, way that we expect life to be. And if we can just be honest and forthright about that, that kind of downloads that, it kind of takes it off our shoulders of us carrying the weight of that. And obviously, the answer is to put that on God's shoulders, who's more than capable of carrying that load.